I used to clean up crime scenes for the mob, but after this incident I had to leave for good. For the past couple of years I have worked some pretty shady and highly illegal jobs. I'm not a drug dealer, human trafficker, and I in no way do physical harm to anyone else. All I do is clean. It may seem cliche, but my official title is private janitor. When someone makes a mess that they need cleaned up in a quick and discreet manner, I am the guy they call. I started the job just to help pay for college. An old friend of mine was in the business of selling hot vehicle parts. My job was to simply deliver the parts to the buyer. It was a simple job until one day, my friend ripped off someone that you just don't rip off. They got their payback, and to make an example, they forced me to clean the shop up. It killed me inside to do it, but I was really afraid, so I made sure the job was done, and more. One of the enforcers of the family that my friend ripped off liked the way I handled the whole situation. The head enforcer talked to the patriarch of the family, and I went to work for them. Not like I had any choice in that matter, but still. I did menial jobs for the family for a few months before they considered my debt paid. When they told me that I could leave on my own terms, they suggested that I become a private worker and they would tell their friends that I was the guy to hire. So for the past 2 years I've done jobs for a multitude of people. Hell, if I decided to blackmail my clients I could be a very rich man, but making $90,000 a year is enough for me. I call that the soul tax. I know that what I've done was wrong. I know that I have deprived thousands of people of the justice they deserve, but I've always been able to disconnect my feelings from the job. Well, up until a month ago. It was the 20th. Normally I don't work on Fridays, but the guy that called in told me that it would be an easy job. I was pretty apprehensive when he told me that he would be at the spot. I've only done a handful of jobs like that due to the level of danger involved, but he was willing to pay $10,000 for a single person clean. On the phone, the guy sounded really paranoid. His deep, scratchy voice turned childlike as the conversation went on. He said, "Please, hurry up, I want this to be over with." It was 11 at night and I wanted to go out, so I got there as quickly as I could. Shit, it was in a very suburban neighborhood. When I pulled up to the address, I was in shock of how nice the house was. It was a lot nicer than mine. I lugged my suitcase up to the front door and rang the bell. Within a few seconds, a man opened the door. This guy easily had to be 6'8" and looked to be 250. A red light that came on from within the house glared off his bald head. His eyes darted crazily behind me and told me to please come in. Once inside, I could tell that something wasn't right. From the front door, there was a hallway that led directly into the kitchen. I lugged my suitcase down the hall but had to stop in the middle once I saw what was on the walls. All these paintings that were hung up had been ripped to shreds. The only painting that was left untouched was what looked like that finger painting that was hung up at the end of the hall. On the canvas was a crudely drawn red kickball and the word love painted at the top. After staring at the paintings for a couple of seconds, I walked into the kitchen. Holy shit, it was beautiful. Next to the actual kitchen area sat a large oak table with 5 chairs all around it, and a red light hanging over it. The man who had hired me sat in one chair, his head in his hands, sobbing. In the middle of the table sat a shit ton of newspaper clippings, all about missing children and kidnappings that had gone on in the area. That's when it hit me. I remember seeing this guy in the news last August begging for his daughter back. That's when I assumed that he must have been the one to kill her, and he wanted me to clean it up. "So, where is she?" I asked the man. He lifted his head and gave me a confused look. "Who?" "Your daughter." I tossed my suitcase onto the table and was opening it up when he quickly grabbed both of my arms. My heart started racing. I tried to jerk back, but he started gripping them tighter. "How do you know she was here?" I finally fell backwards out of his grasp. I probably should have gotten out of there right then, but instead I stayed. I said, "Listen, it doesn't matter how I know. I'm not here to judge, man. Just tell me where her body is." That's when the man jumped to his feet with a desperate look on his face. "Body? No, you're not here for her. Well, she's not here. She's come back to me, but she's different. Whoever took her, changed her. I can't." Before he could keep going, I heard a scratching coming from within a closet that was behind me. The man slammed his back against the wall behind the table. He looked terrified. I was about to ask him what the fuck was going on, but then the closet door opened. It was pitch black, not even a red light illuminated the inside. I took a step forward, and when something came rolling out and stopped at my feet, it was a red rubber ball. I went to pick the ball up and I heard the man scream, "Please don't," but I already picked it up. When I did, it seemed like all the noise was sucked out of the room. Well, until I heard a voice come within the closet. I heard,
"Please come and play with me."
The voice sounded like an older man trying to imitate a little girl's voice. I started to hear shuffling inside the closet, and finally I could see her. The red light acted as a guide, showing me what true horror looked like. She was about 4'5", her pink dress was torn up pretty bad. Her blonde hair looked like she was straw. She had cuts all over her pale arms and legs. And her eyes were sewn shut. She looked at me, cocked her head sideways, and repeated herself.
Please come and play with me.
That's when I heard a loud gunshot behind me. After a few seconds of feeling my body and looking at the monsters in front of me, I saw that neither of us were wounded. Then I looked behind me. The man's body was sliding down the back wall. He had a huge hole in his forehead. I was wondering to myself, where the fuck did he get the gun from? He must have hidden it. Then I realized I was there to clean him up. I said enough. I wasn't sticking around any longer. The girl hadn't moved from the closet doorway, so I quickly snatched my suitcase from the table and ran out the front door. While I was starting the car, I saw the little girl walk to the front door. She seemed to make eye contact with me, waved, and slammed the door shut. I drove off with no intentions of coming back. After that night, I decided to leave that life. It's not an easy environment to leave, but I'd always been trustworthy, so my regular clients accepted it. Today, I work as a cashier at a popular clothing store. I avoid the news at all times, and I tuned myself out when the news broke that the man had killed himself. From what I unfortunately gathered, his daughter was still missing, so the police assumed that he had killed himself over the guilt of killing his daughter. But I know the truth. Sometimes when I'm all alone in my apartment, I check all my closets and empty rooms to make sure I won't ever hear that voice again.
Please come and play with me.
I'm not a good storyteller, so bear with me. A couple of years back, my best friend and I went on a road trip to the States for a music festival, met up with some friends, and saw a lot of cool things and whatnot. One of our friends comes back home with us. He needed to get back home for school, and his buddies didn't want to head home yet. We decided to drive straight home in shifts. It took 24 hours for the full drive. Anyway, my story starts where I am driving. Night shift, it's about 2 a.m. It's a beautifully clear night, full moon, no clouds, middle of the summer, party type night. While noticing all of these conditions, I also noticed that we have followed the GPS onto a back road and driven into a huge valley. Open fields, not another car or house in sight, and it is important to note that we have not seen anyone or anything relating to the human presence for a few hours. Upon entering the valley, we lose satellite signal, we have no satellite radio, no GPS, and we lose cell signal. Doesn't really matter, as I know we followed this road for a couple more hours. About 20 minutes after entering this valley, and after losing all of our connections, we came upon a bridge. As we got closer, I see a cart pulled up on the side of the road. Not uncommon, people sleep in pullouts when they can. What is uncommon is that the car has all its windows blacked out. With all of the light from the moon, we should be able to get at least a partial look inside, but it was completely black. Getting closer, we also realized that it has no license plate that we can see. No big deal, we assume that it is just an abandoned car out here in the boonies. That is, until we pass this vehicle and almost immediately its lights turn on, and it pulls out behind us on the road. Now this is where it gets creepy. This vehicle starts tailgating us in the middle of nowhere, and we can't see who's inside or anything. Again, we brush it off. Maybe he is lost, needs to follow someone to get out of the area. Doesn't explain the blacked out windows or the lack of a license plate, however. Anyway, with the car following us, I start to get an uneasy feeling. Subtle at first, but growing stronger. Soon I get an all-out, get the fuck away from this vehicle ASAP feeling. I find it important to note that I do not frighten easily, I do not panic, and I have only ever gotten this feeling in times that I know for a fact my life is in danger. I push these feelings aside as it seems like the silliest response to a possibly explainable situation. That is, until I see something in the middle of the road. Almost on cue, the car backs off. As I and my companions, one of whom was asleep beforehand, try to make out what was in the middle of the road. Coming closer, we see what looks to be a body laying in the middle of the lanes. This is not a big road, and like I said, it was also a back road, still paved, but very small. At this moment, and at the sight of what appears to be a body in the road ahead, we start freaking out. I in no way am stopping for no one in this desolate and isolated area. There are no other vehicles around other than the one following us, and I can see no housing or lights for as far as I can see. No call service, no satellite, nothing. I quickly tell the others that I am not stopping, and I am going around or through. By this time we're almost on it. There is no room to go around as there are no shoulders on the road and deep ditches on the sides, and we are close enough to see that it is a scarecrow, and I drove over top and onwards. This car, small enough to go around it, continues to follow. I speed up, it speeds up, I slow down, it slows down, until I punch it. After about 2 minutes of this, the car slows down, does a U-turn, and drives back. Now my passenger turns to me and says, "I swear I saw spikes in that thing." Lucky for us, we were driving in a huge truck. The wheel span was bigger than the scarecrow on the road, and we never even touched it. It was another half hour before we reached cell services and the satellite picked back up. It wasn't until we reached home at 5 a.m. and then we remembered. During this time, there had been a couple of missing people reported in our province. People who were on vacation and driving home from the States who never made it home or were ever found. I and my passengers fully believed that we escaped some crazy movie-type death for ourselves. Anyway, that's my crappy story. 100% true. Yes, we contacted the police about it and ended up making a full police report. However, we were unable to pinpoint the exact location. There wasn't anything they could really do other than file their report. We definitely didn't want this to happen to anyone else, as it was creepy as hell. I've been debating on posting this, not because I've been scared, but simply because this is my first post since joining Reddit. Please forgive my writing, as sometimes my wording and punctuation could be better. I'll start off by explaining the area so you can get a good picture of where this occurred. We live in a small neighborhood. All of the surrounding streets dead end to a half-circle park. Behind the park are some woods and a railroad track. When we were younger, we all played in the front of the woods. We never ventured too far back. This was our play area for years. Never had an issue or scare. This area was a pretty and well-lit wooded area. Anyhow, one day my brother Jimmy, my best friend Sarah, and my brother's best friend Ian were all building a dam in the middle of a small creek that ran through the park and the woods. The boys decided they were going to head back to Ian's house for some snacks. Sarah and I said we would stay and finish our camp area. As we were moving rocks around, I got a very odd feeling come over me. A strange feeling that we were being watched. I immediately think it's the boys trying to scare us and just continue what we were doing. Sarah and I load up some big rocks and head back to the creek and put them down at the dam. I got that feeling again, and as I stand up I see something straight in front of me, about 30 feet away. I can't clearly make out what it was yet because it was behind a bush, but I do see that it is a pattern of red and blue. I know that's nothing the boys had on, so at this point I'm focusing on trying to figure out what it is. As I am scanning up the bush, I start to realize it is a clown. I shit you not, my heart started pounding immediately. The clown's eyes and my eyes lock. He is wearing a blue and red hat with a reverse pattern red and blue jumpsuit. I grab Sarah's shirt and immediately pull her upright, and she notices the man right away. He is smiling with a full face of makeup and has a huge knife. We both say nothing and start running as fast as our legs can take us. He begins to follow. We can hear twigs snapping in the ground crunching, but we are booking it. We run through the front of the woods and through the side of the park and up her dead-end street. Ian and Jimmy are 2 houses up from the end and see us running and are screaming, "What is going on?" While running past, we scream, "A clown," and they start laughing. We are still running, screaming for our lives, and finally make it to the middle of the street where Sarah's dad, Danny, is now running out of the front door because he hears us screaming. We meet Danny right at the beginning of the neighbor's house, and we are trying to explain what we've seen, and he says, "Girls, stop it now. This is ridiculous. What are you talking about?" as we try to catch our breath. By this time, Jimmy and Ian have caught up to us. We are crying and pointing and telling Danny again that we had seen a clown and knife. Jimmy and Ian are laughing, and Danny is asking them if they played a prank on us. At about this time, an old yellow Pinto type car comes from the dead end at the park and pulls up right next to the sidewalk at the yard we are in. Sure enough, plain as day, it's the fucking clown. No hat this time, but knife in hand and telling us to come here. Danny starts shoving us all towards the house, and he himself is scared and running now. The car drives off down the street. We get inside and Danny calls the police. We had to give statements, and the police patrolled the neighborhood and the park for a few weeks. We were never allowed to go in the park again, and a few months after that the city started to clear out the woods, cut down many trees and made a walking area that you could see through all the way to the train tracks. My friend and I used to talk about this many times up until her death. No one would believe us if they had not seen it as well. It was just so scary because whoever it was had to go down the dead-end street to leave the neighborhood. Either way, the man was not afraid of us, nor the small group of people that we had gathered from our screaming. He very bravely stopped right in front of us as our father was trying to comfort us and calm us down, all while flashing his knife. I feel like we're lucky to be alive. Had it just been one of us left in the woods, which sometimes occurred, I don't think there would have been a group of 4 of us any longer. Sarah's dad stopped drinking that day. We all have the fear of clowns. This is my first time posting on Reddit. After reading heaps of stories on here, I can't help but want to share my own. To give some context, I was 14 when this happened, and I was with my best friend Holly, who was 17. We were both very small ladies and obviously at the time, very young. It was a Friday night and Holly and I went to her friend's place for a little get together. Despite both being underage, we drank way too much and by the time we decided to go home at midnight, we weren't very steady on our feet. We lived in a small city in Canada and for the most part, it was pretty safe. I was spending the night at Holly's place and as we were drunk, we took a short bus ride home. The closest bus stop was about a kilometer from her place. The bus stop is a park and ride, so there was a well-lit parking lot and the rest of the walk was on a quiet residential road with no street lighting. We walked this route a lot and didn't think twice about walking on it this particular night. We got off the bus, both still drunk and enjoying our walk back to hers. We walked through the parking lot which had a few cars parked and then started walking into the darkness. Everything was pretty ordinary this far, but I noticed Holly got quiet and started to walk faster. I figured she was sobering up and keen to get home, so I started walking faster to keep up. She looked at me, seeing I was oblivious to my surroundings, and she told me she thought someone was following us. I looked back to see a person walking behind us, but a decent distance away. No one else got off the bus with us, and no one was around when we got off the bus, so we reckon this person came from the parking lot. We both started to sober up real quick, but tried to rationalize the situation against our gut instincts. We looked behind us every few seconds to gauge the situation, and we could see the person was gaining on us. We could now make out that the person was a full-grown male. We were both starting to panic and run scenarios through our heads when Holly told me we need to run because he has a bat. We both started running. As I did, I looked behind me to see this dude did have a baseball bat. I can't remember if he was running too or just speed walking, but he was still following us. I remember feeling this horrible urgency and panic overcoming me, and my survival instincts were kicking in. Holly and I both knew we could not stop running until we were inside with the door locked. I know from running track that if you look behind while running, you slow down. Against all my instincts, I didn't look behind me, and after what seemed like ages, we made it home. We ran into the house shaking and crying, and luckily Holly's dad was awake. We told him what happened. He had us call the cops while he got in his car. He wanted to drive the road to see if he could find the dude and get a better description for the police, but he didn't see him. I'm not sure when we lost him or if he followed us all the way home, but nothing ever came of the situation. It's been over 10 years since this went down, and I try not to think about what could have happened, but the thought of a grown dude waiting in his car with a baseball bat for vulnerable people to walk by just gives me goosebumps. I hope you guys enjoyed volume 2 of my creepy stories series. I put a lot of time and effort into this, so it would be well appreciated if you could leave a like on this video and subscribe to the Urban Files. I'll catch you guys next week.
All I wanted to do was play with you.